Hey everybody, Film Brown here, at the movies with film. Got a humdinger of a film for you tonight. You know, we love that Alfred Hitchcock. When Alfred Hitchcock comes up on our list, we get quite excited and we're really kind of working at getting those films out to you. This is 1930. This is early sound Hitchcock. And his use of sound, even later on when he's, used to it, sound is the sort of the what everybody is using, and we've got the sophistication of dubbing and things like that, has always been good. But in his earlier periods, when he had to really kind of work at doing things with the limitation of the medium, because the sound technology was not really up to speed yet, 1930 it wasn't for England, it wasn't largely for any place, he had to make some creative decisions, and he made some great creative decisions in this film that we're watching tonight. Murder. What a great title. Very simple. Murder. Now, it's based on a book called Enter Sir John. And Sir John, in this film is played by Herbert Marshall. And Herbert Marshall plays this sort of impresario, actor, playwright, producer. He kind of runs the whole gamut of things. And he gets himself onto jury duty. You know, like all of us, sometime or other we have to serve our country in a jury duty situation. And he couldn't get out of it, I guess, couldn't give a good excuse, so he had to sit in on this murder trial. And the jury twists his arm a little bit because he sort of thinks that the person that is on trial is innocent. But by and large, everybody else is on the side of guilty, and he caves in. And in that caving in, he feels a little bit guilty about it. Because in a way, as in Hitchcock's world, that level of guilt, that idea that he has, through his caving, basically been complicit in the execution or the death penalty that will be given to this character. So he feels he has to do something. He has to try to become, and this is the beauty of this film, and this is the beauty of a lot of different films that deal with justice sort of being what? Not something you can trust is doled out by the institutions that normally dole out justice. We have somebody who comes in and says, hey, things are not right here. Individuals have to take responsibility and sort of go out on their own, and, well, in the case of Sir John, he's going to become a detective, actor detective. And he's going to go out there and he's going to try to find out what happened. Now, here's the story. This woman, supposedly killed this other woman with a poker. And she can't remember anything about it. And since she can't really remember much about it, supposedly, this is how things go, supposedly or not, she can't come forward and confess her innocence. And he, finding this a little bit interesting that she supposedly can't remember what's going on with what happened that night, goes in and starts solving the problem. And she sort of brings in other people to help him, other actors. This is very much of a play about plays, a play about playing on plays. And it's a very, I think, well-crafted piece. There's some interesting use of sound, for instance, too, that has sort of voiceovers of him thinking in front of a mirror with music playing, supposedly from a radio. I guess they had a 40-piece orchestra that was sitting right behind the wall that was playing that piece, so that the radio itself wasn't playing it. It was actually a real orchestra playing there, because they would have had to record the sound at the time of the shot, because it wasn't allowed to be dubbed yet at that period. This film was also shot in two versions, English version and a German version, which Hitchcock, I guess, I was reading an interview with Hitchcock, the Truffaut interview with Hitchcock, one of the very famous interviews that Hitchcock gave, and he claims that the German version, he just wasn't happy with it after the fact, because he sort of didn't rewrite the dialogue into more German dialect rather than just kind of keeping it more English sounding, even though it was in the German language. And he confessed to not having a good ear for German. Even though he worked in the German film industry early on, he had a kind of a passable German vocabulary. He didn't have an ear for it. And therefore it created sort of a wooden film for him. This film works, the dialogue in this is very crisp, and works really, really well. and the way that the mystery plays out, I was really taken by it. Now, some people have argued that there's some woodenness in here, some camera roaming around, for instance, needlessly at certain points. I kind of like that. It might be because I've gotten used to it. You know, Smokey's scope here has a camera that seems to kind of have a mind all of its own. You get used to that. There's a scene early on here where one of the actresses goes off with the landlady to make a pot of tea. I was starting to think that maybe Smokey was behind the camera for that scene, because that camera goes back and forth between two different rooms. Yep, sort of like that. Back and forth between two different rooms with the characters doing their dialogue back and forth. And instead of cutting back and forth, it's all one fluid motion. It's not only Smokey-like, it's very Baba-like to a certain extent. Now, I've read some people who said that came off a little mawkish. I like it. And I'm not thinking it's only because it harkens to something that I hold important, that's Smokey scope, okay? But also because I like mobile framing. And Hitchcock has always been sort of a man in between, theoretically, between those two, basic ways to approach a scene. Edit, montage style, or use it long takes. And you can see that that's already starting as a principle for him. He's starting to develop the long take-ism in his sound period, and other times using editing. The end of this film, which I can't go too far into, I'll just say that it deals with a circus and a trapeze act, does a really nice job with editing, and with acting as well, but with editing, quick montages and things, which really does harken back to his silent style of acting and of editing at the same token. Think you're going to enjoy Murder? I found myself very entranced with this. I like films that deal with sort of meta discourses. And what I mean by that is it's a film about putting on a play, or about play acting, and about the idea of artifice, and walking through artifice, and using artifice as a means to communicate. And I like the idea of an actor who becomes a detective. Think you're going to enjoy this? Let's roll 'em, Smokey.